Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for coming out to Superfest. We're super excited to have you all here. My name is Victoria Kucher. I am the Executive Director of Hand Eye Society. So first, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we gather, create, and live. Hand Eye Society's work takes place on the treaty land of the Mississaugas of the Credit of First Nation, an area which the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Anishinaabe have lived on and throughout time. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, a covenant between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and to protect the land. We want to take this time to acknowledge that Hand Eye Society operates on occupied territories. We recognize the sovereignty and the right to autonomy of the original peoples of this land, and we commit to recognizing and resisting the real impact and consequences of colonialism within the game industry and the arts community at large. Woo! Indeed. All right, so we are excited today to have the Game Workers Unite Toronto here to lead this panel. This organization is dedicated to advocating for workers' rights in the game industry. And Hand Eye Society and the Super Festival supports workers and their right to organize. We believe that game workers, commercial and non-commercial alike, deserve fair compensation and respect for their labor. So, without further ado, let me hand it over to our gracious host.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you, Victoria. We're really excited to be here. Thank you all for joining us in person, for folks joining us on the stream. I'm here as a volunteer from Game Workers Unite Toronto. You've heard about us already, and we're going to be running this talk tonight, talking to some workers and organizers who were part of the Bethesda Game Workers union campaign with One BGS, which went public and won their union this year. So yeah, we wanted to be here tonight with actually another guest here, but unfortunately, due to a train accident, we can't control that, unfortunately. But we've got two folks out here who you're going to meet really, really shortly. So Bethesda is probably a studio that doesn't need a lot of introduction for people in the room, but they've worked on games in the Fallout series, in the Elder Scrolls series, most recently Starfield. To get a bit of context and history about the company and then about the organizing campaign, Bethesda for a long time was acting as an independent game studio and publisher, formerly organized under ZeniMax, until 2021, where it was bought out by Microsoft. As a result, it ended up under the labor neutrality agreement that exists between Microsoft and the CWA, the Communication Workers of America, who are also out here tonight. And we might talk about that a little bit later. Last year, in 2023, workers at Bethesda at a couple different studios, they've got studios in Austin, Dallas, Rockville, and of course in Montreal in Canada, who we're talking to tonight, started talking about organizing a union, getting together, and went public this year in June with the One BGS union. They won their union certification vote in July of this year in the United States and August of this year in Montreal. I mean, yeah, we can give a hand for that, absolutely. Woo! And now One BGS is entering bargaining for its first collective bargaining agreement. So their first, big contract that's going to be, win, set some standards for workers at the studio. So tonight, the way this is going to go, I've got a few pre-prepared questions. We'll talk through kind of the history of what organizing looked like from the inside to give you all a picture of, what this union campaign looked like and how it was done. And then we'll throw it out to people live here in the room and hopefully on the stream as well with any questions that we got for these two. So I think without further ado, we can throw it over to introductions to our guests here. Simon, do you want to start with, your name? I already gave that one away. Name, pronouns, and maybe how you got into the games industry and what you do.
Sure. Hi, my name is Simon Préfontaine, or Simon Préfontaine. I'm a game designer on the mobile team at Bethesda Game Studios in Montreal. I've been in the industry since 2008. I used to think I wanted to work in cinema, and then I realized I was spending every night playing video games instead of watching movies. So I moved to Montreal, and eventually made my way to Bethesda and to here today. So, pronouns he, him.
All right, thank you. And Dan, you want to take it away?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan O'Corn, he, him pronouns. I am a part-time organizer at CWA Canada, so I helped BGS work on their campaign. That's sort of my part-time work that I do after my day job. My day job is I'm also a games worker. I'm in the games industry. I am a producer at Co-op, which is based in Montreal. I'm still based here in Toronto. I've been in the industry for about 9 years at various studios. That's me.
Awesome.
Oh, how did I get it? Should I talk about how I got into the industry?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah. I was in music first, and then I was really stressed out about finding a job there. And so I went to a second industry that's also like really terrible for jobs, but at least has studios that you can work for, which the music industry doesn't really. And so I was like, "That's cool. I should do that. I love games. They're really cool." So I did that, and then found out how bad it was, and was like, "I should unionize this place probably."
Awesome. So let's get started. I think for the first kind of question to get into it, we want to talk a little bit about when you were first getting involved and maybe talking to coworkers about wanting to form a union, or Dan, in your case, kind of getting involved in the campaign. You know, what brought you to the campaign? What was that like? And then what were the big, workplace issues or motivations when you were joining the campaign, either that you felt or that like coworkers felt as well?
Well, I do know that like ages ago, I talked to some of my colleagues awkwardly at Bethesda about unionization, but this is before I did much training or anything, so I was not very appealing in my pitch, and it didn't really go anywhere. But then years later, COVID happened and work from home happened, and then eventually return to office happened, and that upset a lot of people. And some of those people who were upset remembered me talking about this union idea. So they poked me, and I got involved with all those other people getting organized. And return to office was one subject. There was others along the way. I'm sure we'll talk about them all. But that was like the main. That got the snowball rolling, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, maybe you want to take answer in place for Gabriel, who can't make it tonight. I know he joined a little bit later. Yeah. As people reaching out to more folks at Bethesda, I don't know if you want to share anything that he shared with us, or like notes from Gabriel.
Yeah, I'm trying to like remember what he was talking about. But yeah, so I know that Gabriel came in a lot later in the campaign, right? Like he was sort of more in the home stretch a little bit.
Yeah. He was in a sort of a section of the studio that we weren't as familiar with, or that we didn't have as many personal connections with. So when we reached out to him, it was kind of blind. But luckily, he was someone who also had always seen the problems with the game industry and knew unionization was going to happen one day. So when we poked him, he was game.
Yeah, and this is like a really great illustration of how you sort of do that, like step-by-step organizing, right? Like you are talking to people directly and you're having these one-on-one conversations, and you're also thinking really hard about like, okay, I have this group of people that I'm organizing with, that we call that like an organizing committee. And who do we not have yet? Like you want that organizing committee to be really representative of everyone across your studio, including like your studio disciplines, but also in terms of like your studio's social groups and your studio's demographics, and you want to make sure that's all represented in your organizing committee. And that was a section of your organizing committee that you hadn't had yet, right? You didn't have coverage of that yet, so Gabriel sort of like filled in that gap really late. And I think, at least from my perspective, sort of from a organizer, like staff organizer perspective, that felt like a really big moment for the campaign really heating up, right? You being able to cover that gap. Yeah.
So going from that stage where you first kind of got involved in this organizing committee, like Dan's talking about, what was the process of, reaching out to more coworkers? I guess I want to ask what the hurdles were going from, okay, I'm really interested and motivated. I'm seeing like we have to do this RTO, and that's a big pain point for me. What was it like reaching out to other people and making connections really outside of the immediate people that you knew?
Sure. Well, one big part of it was we did what we call social mapping, which was basically a fancy name for a big Excel sheet with all the employees in the company in it. And we're mapping out like who do we think is game for unionization, like who's friends with who, what issues do we know these people have, and we were doing that. But mostly what we were looking for at the beginning was looking for other leaders, like other people that would want to join our organizing committee, because before you can ask, a super majority of people to sign a card, you want to find more leaders to help you with that, to help spread the load, and like, many hands make lighter load, I think is the expression. So that was our focus at the very beginning, hence why we reached out to Gabriel and stuff like that. So mapping out and finding leaders of different social groups. It might not be like, I don't necessarily mean this is a lead designer or a lead programmer. This might be someone who organizes bar nights with people, or this might be someone who organizes board game nights, or this guy is one of the clique of Brazilians we have that always hang out. Like those are the sort of groups that we look for leaders of. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about just like your one-on-ones and having to actually talk to people directly?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what that was
exactly.
like?
So
Yeah.
we talk about. I mentioned return to office being the biggest, one of the biggest pain points and motivations for a lot of people. But management asking us to return to the studio was actually in our advantage, ironically, because we were able to poke people and say like, "Hey, you're going to be at the studio Wednesday with me. Do you want to go for a coffee?" And then you kind of talk about their, you don't drop the union word right away. You ask like, how do you feel about this RTO? Or you find out about other things that might bother them. But speaking to them in person is way more useful than over text or over something like that. If you can't do in person, something Gabriel mentioned us, there's only so many lunches and coffee breaks in a week. So if you can't talk to them in person, at least speaking to them vocally over phone or Discord is a million times better than sending them an email. Like emails are so easy to ignore, texts are so easy to forget about. Just speaking to someone directly is most important.
Yeah, and this is also again from sort of the outside perspective, talking about your campaign as like a not international, I guess, campaign, but like across North America, right? Like straddling Canada and the States. And what's cool about that is the way that you were all sort of able to put those one-on-ones on different people, sometimes at different studios.
Yeah,
right?
so someone's producer might be in Rockville, or one of the designers on our team is not in Montreal, is in the United States. So it became really useful when we would do our social mapping and we'd look at some person and we'd say like, oh, none of us really know this person, but we know she works with so-and-so in Rockville. And then we would ask that person in Rockville, hey, can you reach out to her and kind of see how she feels about all this? So there was a lot of cross-border collaboration.
Yeah, like that person was like based in Montreal, working for Montreal, but actually mostly had relationships with people in one of these other studios, right? So it was a way that you could pull those people in. And I'm sure you got pulled into a lot of those conversations as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
talking to Rockville folks, talking to other folks, yeah.
That's actually where I wanted to go next and ask more concretely. Like Bethesda is quite a big studio. There's like 4 different offices plus more. There's also, within Microsoft more broadly, you work with some support studios, some of which, like the ZeniMax QA workers, were already organized going into your campaign. What was it like during the campaign working at such a big studio? Was that like a challenge? I know we've talked a little bit about how that can be a benefit coordinating with other workers, but concretely, how did that go? Maybe some upsides and downsides of organizing in such a large ecosystem, and also in the ecosystem of Microsoft as well.
Well, you mentioned the ZeniMax QA. I will highlight them again and give them another shout out. ZeniMax is again the parent company of Bethesda, so they have the QA department which works for Bethesda Game Studios, for id Software, for Machine Games. ZeniMax QA unionized before us. And they are huge. They're 400 or something like that. And so we always felt smaller than them. So it always felt much more achievable for us. Like in Montreal, we're only 120. So like we're not 400. This will be easy. And ZeniMax QA, we can talk more about them later, but they're still in contract negotiations. But even then, they've already gotten a lot of solid wins for us. Like we have more vacation days because of them. They would make these wins in bargaining, and then the company would, might as well spread them out to everyone. So that helped us a lot when talking to people one-on-one, because we could say, look at QA, like they haven't had layoffs since they unionized. Look at QA, like they're so much tighter and like more confident since they unionized. And that helped assuage a lot of people's fears and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets lost sometimes when you're doing this organizing, because you're so focused on your local studio and like your studio. But one thing that happens a lot of the time, and that certainly like me and like my other CWA organizers have talked about a lot, is like unions tend to be like these like dominoes falling in a lot of ways. Like there is this solidarity that happens when a studio finally unionizes that can spread out to everyone else and to everyone else in the industry. And that's like why, personally, that's why I'm so big on unions, because I want this industry to be good. I don't just want one studio to be good. I want the entire industry to be like stable and good and solid, where people can stay there for a long time. And that's sort of how that happens. You go sort of studio by studio, and when you have these examples of studios who've already done it and have already have these like amazing results that they're getting from it, it's a lot easier to then go back to your coworkers and say, hey, you know what they got? Like we could do that here. It really opens the doors for that kind of thing.
One other thing you mentioned too about being a big studio spread over several locations. One thing that helped with that is that our social mapping, we for all 4 locations, that's Austin, Dallas, Rockville, and Montreal, we shared one big Google Doc, but we had one kind of main page that had these beautiful like pie chart summaries of like, here's the goal of how many people we need to get to 50% and da da da. And it led to a lot of really good friendly competition between the different studios. Where we'd be like, oh, they've already talked to 50% of their people. We got to talk to people. Or like, oh my God, they've got more like people agreed to sign cards than we do. And it helped divide. We're 400 people, but we were divided into 4 chunks, and we're competing with each other, and that made things like way easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So after people got involved in that committee and you're working and you're signing cards with people and reaching that 50% inside a studio, what was the process like going live, going public with your union, going to a vote? How did that go for you guys?
I'll talk first mostly about Montreal. Quebec labor law is much more pro-worker compared to most places in North America. There's no weird thing where you have to like run a campaign in like 30 days and then there's an election and the company has time to like shoot it down. In Quebec, basically what you do is once you have, you want to have a super majority. You don't want 50% plus 1 of votes, but once you have a majority of votes, so of cards signed, you send that to the government. They verify that it's okay, and then you have a union. So us going public was we waited until we had a super majority. And then one night we all got on a big Zoom call with the American studios too, and we all signed our cards and made it like a big party. And then once followed a few stragglers the next day, but once we had those cards signed, we basically went to management and said, by the way, you don't know about this, but we're forming a union. We now sent our cards to the provincial government. And then we did that I think in June, and then in August everything was verified. They called a few people to verify that no one was coerced or paid or anything like that. The Americans, it was like slightly different, I think, but largely the same. They didn't have to. I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but they did not have to do the election thing quite either. But we were also lucky that we had as mentioned before, I'm forgetting the word of it, the CWA.
The portal? Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
the non-disparagement,
Oh, the
Labor neutrality agreement.
oh my
neutrality
God.
agreement.
Yes, thank
Excuse
you.
me. Microsoft might have been in order to buy Activision Blizzard. That might have played a role, but they signed a neutrality agreement to say that they would not do any union busting. When they first became aware of any union stuff, they sent out big public emails saying, we are neutral on this, and we encourage you guys to do what you want.
Yeah, this was like part of the deal for because they had the active campaign going on with ZeniMax, I believe, at the time, right? And so they had to sign this neutrality agreement to say like, hey, you're going to let us buy Activision Blizzard, and we won't do anything to mess with these union elections. Now, granted, there was still some pushback. There were still things that happened regardless. But
do you want to talk about some of that pushback and the legal
Sure.
challenge there?
Well, I'd say like there was not too much legal pushback from management or anything like that. In fact, in all the stages of organizing, typically there's this stage called inoculation where when you talk to your coworkers, you talk to them about maybe some anti-union talking points or lies that they're going to hear about, like union dues are not that crazy, all these other things. But we kind of, instead of doing that, we talked to them about the neutrality agreement. We said, hey, Microsoft's already cool with this. Don't worry, we're not going to face repercussions. They signed a legal agreement. But one thing we didn't realize is that some anti-union discussion might come from, the call is coming from inside the house kind of thing. There were some employees who had heard stories like that before. And then when we went public in the States and they had a week to do their votes and all that stuff, some people took the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and sort of bring up a lot of anti-labor talking points. And we hadn't inoculated people because we had only told them, oh, don't worry, neutrality agreement. But it was a good time to like talk to those people who, maybe had not heard the truth before and answer their questions and stuff like that. But that would be my advice, that even if you're sure you have the most pro-union, super friendly boss, you might still have a colleague who, heard stuff growing up or heard stuff from other people. And that's something to inoculate people for and to think about. Yeah.
also, I'll also just add there, it's a very common anti-union thing to happen where your boss will say, oh yeah, I'm totally in support of unions. And then once you're unionizing your studio, they're like, I hate unions. I've never liked a union before in my life. You're going to tear us apart. One
issue we had, well, it's not an issue. the games industry is very new to unionization, and the roles are very different across all studios. So one thing we had to negotiate with management over was which roles fall under the umbrella of management or not. So our leads management or our senior producers management. Does the role of senior producer mean the same thing in all different studios? Stuff like that. So that was some stuff that lawyers had to look at job descriptions and hammer that stuff out. Though in the end, we were really happy with what was decided. Like we got all the leads, and with the exception of one or two senior producers who had to change their name, we got all senior, not change their name, change their title.
Change your title, yeah.
With the exception of one or two producers which had to change their title, we got all the senior producers as well. So we were pretty happy with what was decided.
I was gonna say it's the process of going through and having these first conversations, then follow up and doing card check, and then inoculating later on when you go public is there's a lot of stages of back and forth, coming back to, sometimes the same people, right? To have these conversations over and over again. That's I think what the organizing committee you had was doing, and the groundwork that you're doing in that, in your workplace mapping list and stuff like that, I think helped you guys to do that.
Yeah, there was I'm thinking of one friend in particular who pretty early on I was like, oh yeah, I'll go talk to him. He's super hippie like me. No problem. And then I talked to him and he was like, no, God, no, I'm super happy here and I'm scared. And I was like, oh, geez, I wasn't ready. But then luckily he, digested for a few weeks and someone else went to talk to him as well. And, he came around and stuff like that. So yeah, sometimes it takes more than one talk with someone to get there.
Yeah, and it's really important to not assume when you talk to someone based on things they've said in the past or whatever. Usually when you're doing these organizing conversations and then you're tracking the conversations afterwards on your workplace mapping, you're sort of tracking actions, right? You're not tracking things that they've said, because usually at the end of an organizing conversation, you're giving someone an ask to do. You're going to give them something. It could be really simple. It could be, oh, come to this little meeting, or it could be, oh, can I get your contact information? Something like that. And so the stuff that you're always tracking is, did they do the ask? And so you can't assume that someone who posts about, social justice causes or whatever is going to automatically be on board with the union that you're putting together. And similarly, you can't assume that someone who maybe is on Slack posting some weird right-wing stuff isn't going to be down for the union, right? It always comes down to the conversations you have with those people, the problems that they have, and that vision that you have for making your lives better and making everyone's lives better, because they're all going to be part of your union regardless, right? Regardless of what their personal politics are. So it's important to sort of get them in regardless, and to really focus in on their immediate problems and put that other stuff sort of out of your mind a little bit.
So I wanted to kind of wrap up before we move on to the Q&A. But to wrap up the questions I have, what was the reaction you had from other developers outside of Bethesda, from fans of the game? Generally, how did people feel when you went public with the union? What was the feedback you guys were getting?
In general, the feedback was really positive. We just checking Reddit and social media and stuff like that, people were really excited and really happy to see that we were unionizing, and that was really exciting. Positivity on the internet isn't always a guarantee. So
I was really nervous about this, just for the record.
Yeah, I'm sure there were some people that weren't in favor and stuff like that. I'm not going to say nothing is unanimous, but in general, the reaction from fans was really positive, and the reaction from other developers was very positive. I've gone to other Game Workers Unite meetups in Montreal, and developers from other studios were really proud of us, really excited. They're really excited to see where our first contract goes, because that might be establishing standards, especially for Montreal. If we gain some extra rights or bonuses, next studio that unionizes is going to be able to point to us and say, hey, Bethesda got this, we want that as well. So no pressure.
And I think some of those wins are probably going to be felt from not just in Montreal, but probably with the Austin, Dallas, Rockville studios. You said already, ZeniMax QA's wins in terms of vacation days, and I think
our bereavement leave was expanded.
Yeah.
And extra vacation days and some other things I can't remember.
You had some AI protections in there?
That's right. The ZeniMax QA signed a legal agreement with management to use AI only to not to replace workers, but only to help the productivity of workers.
Yeah, I know Sega also, because Sega had a couple studios that unionized out in the West Coast. And they have a bunch of AI provisions in their contract as well. So this is something that there is no set rules for what can be in your contract, what can be in that collective agreement. It's totally based on what concerns your coworkers have, what things are deeply and widely felt by the studio, and what you want to fight for, really, right? Like there's no limits to it, you know.
Absolutely. So I think with that, we've got plenty of time now, I think, for Q&A if folks
I have
here.
no idea what time it is.
Yeah, I have no clue.
I have no idea. Has an hour and a half passed? I don't even know.
7:10.
7:10,
All right,
okay.
let's jump into a Q&A. So if do we have a mic for the room or anything like that? I think we're also happy to take questions off the stream chat. So if no questions yet, if
that's
chat wants to drop some questions in, do now.
I think we're getting the audience mic going here.
Are there any hands up for questions now already? Just so
See a
over
couple back
there, one in the
couple
middle
over there.
back. Jordan's working hard. Yep. Arms. We had one over in the middle and over at the back there.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Hello.
My name's Miles. I'm an actor from Actra.
Oh, hey.
Hey, welcome.
Very glad to be here. Thank you. Don't need the applause. Absolutely not. How dare you? Thank you. Twofold question. First of all, why do you feel like the industry has been so resistant to unions up until this point? And then second question, which is completely different, is how do you combat apathy when it comes to membership, the people that you have in the union, and also bringing people into that union? Thank you.
Dan, do you want to talk about it?
I can talk a little bit about, I think, the first part. Maybe you can speak to the second part as the person who got people out of that apathy, right? But to the first part, in terms of the resistance, I mean, I've been organizing for a while. I was organizing with Game Workers Unite before I was in CWA Canada. So I've been doing this for almost as long as I've been in the industry. I think there has been, for a lot of people, this is the first time they're hearing about unions for real. This is like the first time they are really being confronted with an ask and with the idea that they mean something outside of their job and what they do sort of day to day, that they have power and that they have an ability to do something positive that is not just their jobs. And to do it with their coworkers. This is the other thing, right? Like a lot of people, if they have a problem, they assume the first thing that they have to do is go to HR, and that's like the limit of what they can do, basically. And a lot of the time, when you talk to people for the first time, and they haven't heard, all they've heard about unions is like the anti-union rhetoric that we all sort of grew up with. I mean, I'm 33. I grew up in the 90s. A lot of that stuff just sort of ambiently around our media, right? Like, oh, sorry, buddy, I can't carry that pane of glass because it's like out the door, which means it's someone else's job. It's like weird stuff like that, right? That you would just see in cartoons even, right? So we all grew up in that same space where unions were not powerful and they were not militant, and they were very much by popular culture not liked. And that was basically all that a lot of us grew up with when it came to unions. And when someone comes to you with that as a solution, for a lot of people, it's the first time they've ever considered the idea that they could do something beyond themselves individually, that they could do something, but that they have to do it with other people, and that they have to do it strategically, and they have to work at it, and they have to like put all this time in and stuff. And that can be really challenging, I think, for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, it's the first time they're being confronted with it ever in their lives. And they have all this stuff to work through before they can get to that point of doing that. So that's where that resistance, I think, is coming from. And there's also been a lot of, well, no, I think I can pass it on, I think.
Sure. Well, I know one great way to fight apathy I found was simply when having those one-on-one talks with someone before you even bring up unions and stuff, just asking them like, hey, how's it going at work? And like asking them what problems they have. And if you give someone a chance, outside of the office to just vent about work, they'll probably have something to say. Even if it's, and don't get me wrong, I love Bethesda Game Studios. It's this is the best job I've ever had. But when you ask someone what the problem is, you can then follow that up with the question of, well, what are you going to do about it? And the answer often is well, nothing. Like I can't do anything. And that's when you say, like, oh, well, what if we all, like, and that's when you kind of get into that. So that was like a good way of getting people on board is first finding out what their pain points is, what their issues are, and then, showing them that organization is a way you can do it. For as why management is reticent to do this sort of thing, I think, well, it's so alien to the games industry in general. They're just not used to it. Even now, like now that we haven't signed our first contract yet, but just the fact that we've unionized, like there's all these like rules about status quo that come into place. And there's things that management has to pass by the union before they do, and that's totally alien to them. Before they had 100% of the power, and now they have to negotiate or at least alert their workers about stuff, and that's a big change for them. But I think it's for the best. Like we want our studio, like a lot of people have been working at Bethesda Game Studios for decades, and a lot of us want to work there for decades. We want the studio to be profitable and successful. We have the same goals as management. I think the goal is to just, learn how we all work together, and maybe unionization will be a way to make things more standardized and understandable for them as well. Just like in film, I know in film, like, how much an actor is going to get paid minimum. You know how much they can work, stuff like that. So maybe unions will bring that sort of thing to games.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, like, I mean, relative to film, especially, like the games industry is really young. It's really young in terms of how much money it's making. I mean, compared to the 90s or even the early 2000s, studios have grown enormously. I mean, Microsoft and Sony are kind of mega monopolies at this point. And so the scale of production, I think, has gone up a lot in the last 10 years. Looking at histories of film unionization in the 30s and 40s, you had a lot of these same kind of fights over like vertical integration and how workers were going to be unionized across different, production, across different lots, across different like job titles and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of time on our side, and I think like these first collective agreements, right, that we're talking about are gonna hopefully like set a lot of standards and set the kind of like timbre of the fight.
Yeah, I want to go back to the apathy thing real quick. And I think for a lot of folks, they just sort of assume that, again, this is like the political moment that we grow up in, is one where it's like, well, you have a problem? Okay, cool. Like, go vote for a candidate and they'll take care of it for you. And when you are being asked to do something, I think that's what gets over a lot of that apathy, is actually the understanding for people that you actually can't wait for someone else to do it. Like, you have to do it, and if you want this, like, sometimes you'll talk to someone and they'll be like, totally support your union or our union, really want it to happen, hope it happens. But they're like, but I don't want to be part of the organizing committee, or I don't want to do this thing. And I think a lot of getting over that is honestly communicating to that person that, like, this does not happen without you. Like, actually, you need to be here. Like, we need you here. Oh, thank you. Wow. Okay, cool. It's so important. And then, like, a lot of people don't process that. They don't realize that, like, they have that power. They have that power to help and to do something, and that, like, they are needed, right? Like, their skill set, the people they know, all this stuff is, like, what is going to make that union. And, like, the more people that are in that, the stronger you are, and the more wins you can get, and all that kind of stuff. So super important. Yeah.
Simon, you talked about like inoculating against like anti-union talking points from management, but I think inoculation is as much that as it is also sometimes inoculating against apathy or fear or really whatever it is that is preventing people from like coming to and taking part and being in a union. I think we spent a lot of time with that question. Do we want to pass the mic on to someone else? Go for it.
Yes, hello. Incidentally, kind of about that topic, I am a designer at a pretty sizable studio, and I will leave it at that while the stream's going. So I was laid off from my prior gig last year, but I was pretty involved with an organizing campaign there, and regrettably, because of the layoff, I couldn't see it cross the finish line. But the thing that we were kind of stuck on for a pretty long time, and a thing that I was realizing was a problem, was, you want your organizing committee to be the most solid 10% of people, and the people who are most enthusiastic and gung-ho about actually doing all this organizing work on top of the 40 hours of work a week that they have to do already. And I was realizing it's not literally just the first 10% of schmucks that you recruit into the Discord server. So I was kind of wondering if this was a problem that you two encountered and how you pushed past that.
Yeah, our organizing committee went through. I kind of joked about this the other night. It went through kind of a ship of Theseus kind of thing where we replaced it one person at a time until it was by the end. It was not a lot of the same people that were there at the beginning. I think that was something we could tell people, like, hey, if you're joining the organizing committee, like, don't worry, this is not a lifetime commitment. We'd like you to stay on for as long as you can, and then if you get burnt out, if life gets crazy, if something happens, it's okay to step back. So that was that was part of it. Trying to think what else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, as someone who's worked on a bunch of campaigns, that's definitely a problem that we see a lot, right? Is those initial conversations just being like, oh, well, I can definitely get this person on board, and not actually thinking strategically about, okay, who do I need to have on board? Like, who's really important? Where are my gaps, right? Like, who are the people that we can't talk to, and instead sort of take this slightly easier route, or this route that's less intimidating, at least to start with, that is just being like, okay, who can we get? So that's definitely a common pitfall for sure. So don't feel too bad, because it happens.
I'm sure you guys did this on your campaign as well, but a really important thing I think is like training in the
Yes.
process.
So important.
Like some people are, I don't want to say the word schmucks, not necessarily, right? But, a lot of people like come to organizing and are interested, and you have a talk with them, and they've really never done anything like this before. I've never, it's terrifying, like cold calling a coworker and being like, hello, do you have time in your evening to talk about something? What's your problems at work? It's terrifying. It's super awkward. So I mean, I think I'm sure you guys did a lot of this on your campaign. I know it's something that the CWA, as part of the Code CWA campaign, does a lot of training as well. Kind of like regular, I think monthly or every other couple weeks trainings. But,
Yeah, it's
but giving
every
people
month,
those
I believe.
skills.
It's on
Yeah,
the
is it every
Code
month?
CWA website if you want to sign up.
Code
It's a
CWA
two-part
website.
organizer training.
Yeah.
Most weekends.
How much training did you guys do in the course of your campaign? What did that look like, and what did that look like at different stages?
There was I remember doing the Code CWA training. I remember there was an in-person training, like Dan and Nasser and some other folks came up to Montreal to bought us supper, and we did some like in-person actual training, and a lot of like role plays for like
Yes.
the hard asks of how I'm going to talk to people and how I'm
That
going
was
to ask them.
that was a huge turning point.
Yeah.
I think that made you all a lot more comfortable making those hard asks.
Yeah.
So we talk about making hard asks. We talk about making asks that are really direct and really specific, and also potentially difficult, right? Like potentially, you're not trying to just trying to be really strong about your ask and make it very clearly. And I think that's something that a lot of campaigns struggle with. And I know, like, me and Nasser have talked a lot before about just, like, that was such a turning point after we did that training and after you just had that practice to, like, be like, will you come to this thing next week, right? Was such a huge turning point. And so, yes, the training.
I remember at the beginning, I'd, like, talk to one of my best friends, and I'd be like, hey, have you ever? And by the end, I was, like, messaging people I'd never talked to and, like, do you want to go for a coffee? And then they'd meet me at the front gate, and they'd be like, you're Simon? I'm like, yeah, let's go outside. And it was, like... It was way easier. I have such thicker skin now. Yeah. You'll get there.
Did we have any questions from like stream chat potentially? No. Not yet.
More audience questions.
Awesome. Let's go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I have a follow up and then probably a short question. So
for
follow up with that with getting on with. So you're with like Code CWA.
Yes.
So did you shop around for any other unions, or did any of them get in contact with you?
We're in a unique situation in that we're part of Microsoft, and Microsoft signed that neutrality agreement with CWA. And as I mentioned, our QA in ZeniMax was already unionized with CWA, so that made it really easy. And we even had some union folks like join our Discord server and help us out, and they were like immensely useful. So CWA was a natural choice like that for us. I know in Quebec there are other unions, and there are other tech companies like currently unionizing with CSN and the other Quebec unions and stuff like that. So I'm a huge CWA fan, but they're not the only organization.
Yeah, like in Ontario, I know. Maybe we can chat when we're not on a stream, but CWA in Ontario is also a big one for being interested in games, and also IATSE. I don't know currently how that is, but I know there had been at some point some interest with them too, which is great. So like the question I was also going to ask was, in dealing with everything having to be secret, so in navigating, like you talked about approaching your colleagues and how you talk to them, you listen to them and you hear them complain before you even drop the union word. But how was it like keeping up morale and making sure people towed that particular line and keeping things secret for as long as you needed it to be like that?
So like again, when we did our first talks, we would not say the union word right away, like we were saying, just finding out what's your, issues with work. And then when you kind of wanted to bring them into the union stuff, it was as simple as just saying like, hey, if I talk to, like, I'm going to talk to you about something, can we keep this between us? And I never had any issue with people like reneging on that and then like going to the boss and stuff like that. So we were just simply just asking people, and even the ones who were not, that didn't agree to sign a card and stuff like that, they kept it themselves. They didn't run to management and stuff like that. I think that's the advantage of talking to people in person too. Like, first of all, they don't have like a written email they can like forward to someone, but also like you've seen them face to face and they've seen that you're volunteering in your free time and you're like putting in these hours, and decent human beings are not going to go behind your back on that. And sometimes, though, in those first conversations, you might get a feel if someone is anti-union right away, and then you might stop the talk. Like if you're talking about like, oh, what's your problem at work? Oh, what do you think we can do about it? They might be like, oh, there's nothing we can do, or like except unionize, but unions are BS. And then you're kind of like, oh well, look at the time, I have to go. So it's a bit of that as well. Yeah.
This is also a thing we will. Part of doing mapping is also sort of identifying those people who you're like, okay, we definitely need to talk to these people. These people we're going to need to talk to, but like maybe let's wait until a little later in the campaign. Like when we're a little bit more stable, maybe right before a vote, just because like we don't know how those conversations are going to go. So again, like I sort of said earlier, like you don't want to assume based on someone's politics, but there is definitely some people that you get a vibe for of just like, let's wait a little bit on that person.
One thing we did though, by the end, when we already had our supermajority, there was a few people we had like tried to reach out to, we couldn't get in contact with, and some people that were working remotely that we didn't really know that well. By the end, we did just send out emails saying like, hey, we're unionizing, like we're sending our cards in on Monday, because we wanted everyone to know before it went public. We didn't want people to find out through Kotaku or something like that. So some of those people, I think it was better that they found out that way, even though they weren't game. Yeah.
Go for it. I think we've got another
Great question.
Yeah.
Hi, folks. I'm Ted Denola. I'll do some bona fides real fast. I've been in games for professionally about 15 years or so. Actually, the first industry job I had was in Vancouver. I almost stayed in Canada, but I'm from the States, the land of the free to starve and brave in the face of adversity. Anyways, because of 15 years, I am very good at what I do and traumatized. First 7 years was making games. And actually, the last time I talked about this in front of a union was in Australia about 2 years ago, where I talked. The short version is every place I worked for the first 7 years was uniquely messed up and tore pieces of my soul. And I almost burned out. And then for the last 7 years, I got pulled into a giant tech company, which tech companies in the States actually, they take care of you really, really well because they all saw what happened to like Microsoft in the 90s. And they're like, don't do that. Just be friendly. But of course, the patterns are all cycles. So I've been with Meta for 7 years. I love it. I love what they say they are. I'm working to try and figure out whether I can stay at Meta or not because I don't know if I can do my best work there. And so I'm actually one of your sponsors, Stella Mars Games Corporation. And I won't talk about what we do there, but I will talk about a philosophy that might be useful to you when you're trying to win people over, which is a lot of us are, of course, traumatized and are therefore heavily therapized and have friends that have weighed in with how we can use the language of therapy to help build better businesses in terms of mutual benefit. And so when we approach folks for discussions to work with us, and what I've given to other unions around the world, and I'm happy to give you for free because you're a union, we'll talk afterwards if you're interested, is we start with understanding needs and wants. And if you think about it in that terminology, I'm curious if you can give an example of this works. Is needs are, we have to meet them. We cannot work together without needs being met. We cannot violate needs. And then wants, not actually things we're trying to give you because we like you. Wants are how we help you do the work. So if you're here in the audience and your want is a better working environment as a game developer, you have to put in the work for that. And then we can get that for you. You guys can get that. We can get it together. Do you think this makes your discussions easier? Because if you approach it in that way, if you go to someone and say, do you want to join? And they say, no, I don't. It's like, well, cool. Next person.
Well,
Oh, also, Australia's union, by the way, you should meet them. They are between, depending on the count, 20 and 30% of the registered workers in the country.
oh, dang.
Great.
Yes.
We have done some meetings with. I mean, we were talking to there was an actor here earlier. We have done a meeting with SAG in the United States, and we've done. I went,
Sarah Amala?
Sorry.
Do you know Sarah Amala down
Oh,
there?
I wasn't at that meeting. Sorry,
cool.
I
Sorry.
can't remember.
I do know Sarah, but just through work because she was the voice actor coordinator for a game that I was working on. Very cool person.
But we're talking about needs and wants. I never thought about it that way of like separating needs and wants. Off the top of my head, I would say like I said, we're Bethesda's, my favorite place I've ever worked. So I feel like my needs are satisfied, but it's the wants or need if I want to work here a long time, maybe. So it's been much more like, long-term needs, I guess. But there's barely been. Well, no, that's not true. There are some people who are like. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk. Yeah,
I do think there is a big similarity in what you're talking about with how an organizing conversation goes, right? Where you are talking to someone and you're figuring out like what's going on with this person, like what's happening there, and trying to get what their working life is like, right? And understand that and make it better.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess for some people there were wants like, oh, I wish we had better like training and career progression. Other people there were needs like, I'm going to leave unless this happens. So
This is also a huge part of like I assume where you're at right now, where you're going into bargaining and you're putting out surveys, and you already have an idea of what issues a lot of people have and what issues are like the really important ones that you need to fix in your bargaining. But you have the survey going out and you are like collecting all of this information about just like, okay, like what is really important? What are we going to the table? What are we asking for? And that is sort of based on some prioritization and some sense of like seeing what everyone is kind of interested in, right?
That reminds me, if anyone from Bethesda is watching this stream, like fill out that survey, please.
Actually, it's a bit of a follow-up question there. Like when it comes to having those one-on-ones, like how do you take those issues and like filter them and decide on like what are the most important things we're going to pursue? Maybe this is a bit of a segue question to talking a little bit about like what bargaining might look like, or how you sort of set those priorities, or what are things you want to see change from this.
To start, we have a Discord server. It was not mandatory to join the Discord server. We told people we're forming a union, not a Discord server. But there was a channel on there for people to just pitch, bargaining goals that they thought. Maybe it was, pet bereavement, or maybe it was, this or that. And once we had all of those, filling up that channel, we then formed the bargaining survey. The bargaining survey, we made one kind of for the States and one for Canada, though they're almost identical, but there's some stuff in the States that we already have by law in Canada, so they were slightly different. But we tried to keep them as similar as possible, that way we could collate the data when it comes to bargaining. But we just put all those things in a big list and asked people to sort and rank them, scale of 1 to 5, add a comment if you want. And as I was hinting, that survey's gone out and we're waiting for people to fill it out. And then we're going to have a meeting in January once we've gotten all the surveys to reveal the results to everyone, anonymized, but reveal the results to everyone and discuss like, hey, this is what the survey says. Do we all agree? Let's chat, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of how we're going at it.
All right. I'll also say one thing. Throughout the campaign, also, you're constantly updating your workplace mapping with those notes where you've talked to someone and you say, oh yeah, this is the thing that the person was mad about, right? And so you're constantly doing that throughout the campaign, so that even going into bargaining, you have some sense already of like what the big issues are that people are going to feel.
All right. Well, we do have about 15 minutes left, and there's two questions, one from the stream and one from live here. I'm going to go for the stream question first, and somebody says, hell yeah, unions. Are people scared when people approach them? Is there some level of not wanting to put someone in a bad place?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yes, they said, are people scared when you approach unions, and is there some level of not wanting to put someone in a bad place?
Like you are afraid of bringing people in at any time, like, if that puts them in an awkward spot. Or I think I alluded to it earlier, kind of dealing with people's like fear or inoculating against fear is something we talk about sometimes. Yeah. Like sometimes it's not like, oh, my boss says he's going to fire me, but like I'm afraid that, something's going to happen to me, or like I've talked to coworkers where they're like, I'm getting married this year. I can't fuck this up. Yeah. The first example that comes to mind, and I have to be vague to not like to
identify who this person is, but there was someone at our company who had a family member in senior management, and who was definitely not in the union. And we were like, geez, do we like go to him and tell him to keep a secret from his father? So the original plan was like, hey, we will talk to them before it all goes public. We don't want them to be, as shocked like the Kotaku thing I mentioned earlier. So we'll just go to them as late as possible. Though it turned out in the end, like someone else who knew them kind of spoke to them a little earlier, and they were game and stuff like that. But that was a concern with some people of like personal relationships and stuff like that. There were some people who were worried, like they were applying for a promotion or they were hoping to be lead on the next project and stuff like that, and they were not game. Sometimes they won't sign a card. I mean, maybe you won't get 100% because there's some people like that. They though might change their mind later once they hear about everyone else signing cards, or once you go public, they might be like, oh well, I might as well, if it's going to happen now and everyone knows, I might as well sign a card. Once they see that it's anonymous too, they see that management does not get a list of everyone who signs the card. That might assuage their fears as well. What else?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it is about like power numbers, right? And that's how sometimes that's how you get over that fear. That's why we try to be really clear about telling people, like, we're going to need you to support this like publicly when the time is right? Like when the time is right, we're going public, like we need you to like do a public something. And that doesn't need to be a huge thing. It doesn't need to be like we're marching to the boss's office. It doesn't need to be a strike necessarily, though it might be depending on how negotiations go. It might be something as simple as like, oh, just like change your Slack profile to the union's logo, to like our union's logo, right? And it's really important to do some stuff like that because that is what helps those people who are afraid and who are scared to come out and show their support. When they can see how many people around them are in support, it makes it a lot easier for them to come out and be like, okay, yeah, cool, like I'm down too, and I'm going to do that public stuff as well. So that's like a great way to get over the fear. Once you're public, obviously don't do that when you're not public.
It's all baby steps. Like, yeah, first it might just be signing a card, which is totally anonymous. Then it might be Slack profile frame. Then one day it might be like signing a letter and stuff like that. So, yeah, baby steps.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. We do have one final question for the night, so I'll pass it on to our last person in the audience.
Thanks. Hey, what's up, folks? My name's Nasser. I was actually the lead organizer on the BGS campaign, so I had the privilege of working with these fine folks. And before I get to my question, well, thank you. I just want to take a moment to actually just like acknowledge how fucking incredible this monumental victory was. When you fix an industry and you aim to make it more equitable and just, somebody's got to go first. Right? Someone's got to be the trailblazers, and BGS genuinely are those trailblazers. So I wanted to take that second to acknowledge kind of, all the work they've put in and what they're doing for the workers that are going to come after them. So that's incredible. But my question, I think a lot of organizing in terms of the priorities, they're very material, of course, naturally, right? That's the most, I think, impactful thing to most people's lives. And also just the way we talk about organizing, it's very technical, right? We talk about the one-on-one conversations. We talk about workplace mapping. But a lot of the time, some of the biggest things we see as a result of organizing, whether it's the collective agreement, or it's just between the workers themselves, it's actually cultural, right? There's a huge shift that takes place. I've seen examples, I've worked with workers who they gained so much confidence through an organizing campaign, they left abusive relationships. We've talked to workers who, developed relationships between coworkers they never thought they would have, right? Because maybe they disagreed on something maybe separate. And so my question is, Simone, both for yourself and I think in the broader workplace, what kinds of shifts have you already seen, whether it's about you and your coworkers and the relationship you have with them, or just broadly speaking, have you seen any of these shifts already? I'm just curious about that.
We saw it first with the ZeniMax QA union. They are really tight. And like since they unionized and they went through all that together, they have been so like close-knit and so like, I don't know, a lot of businesses talk about like, oh, we're a family, but like they actually they feel like a family. And I know my girlfriend can attest to this. I've spent a lot of evenings and weekends on Zoom calls and writing emails and things like that. But I've gotten a lot of really good, sincere thanks from a lot of my friends. And and it means a lot. and that's why it's worthwhile. And I feel a little tighter and a lot closer to a lot of my coworkers, especially the union organizers that I've done all those meetings and stuff with. We feel like really close and tight, and I have some really good, deep, strong friendships that I didn't have a year ago, and I have unionization to thank for that.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Solidarity is a real feeling, right? Yeah. I think with that, we should probably get wrapped up here. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you for the really active discussion. Thanks for everyone who's joining us on the stream. You can follow us at GameWorkers Unite Toronto on Twitter, glue_Toronto on Twitter. We're going to be here at the back with a bunch of free zines, merch. You can talk to us if you want to get in touch with us. We've got a sign-up form. Come sit down with us. You can follow _BGS on Twitter, 1BGS. You can get in touch with Code CWA. Just look up the CWA. It'll pop up on Google, I'm sure, pretty quick. And that's us. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you to the Hand-Eye Society for having us here tonight. Enjoy the ball. And solidarity.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. It's been a pleasure listening to all of you talk about the importance of games and games unionization. We do have, I believe, a speech. Victoria, you around? Victoria? She is somewhere. Brendan? Sorry, technical difficulties. One moment. But in the meantime, I'm Jordan Sparks. I'm the Director of Tech, and I hope everybody is having a wonderful Super Festival. All right. So while everybody is waiting, just so you know, we have all sorts of things going on here at the Hand-Eye Society Ball. We have the games that you see all around you at the event. If you're watching from the stream, sorry you can't be here, but it's great to have you here in spirit. There's also a raffle going around. There's 2 raffle stations, one over there and one over there. We have plenty of raffle prizes for you. We have, let's see, we have a bunch of prizes. We have 2 actress shirts. We have 1 prize package of actress shirt, toque, and Hand-Eye Society tote bag. We have tickets to a comedy bar show. We also even have 1 raffle prize with a comedy bar show and a free comedy class if you buy a raffle and you get picked. We have a pair of admissions to the ROM, as well as 2 tickets to the AGO. We have a make friends make games package from our friends over at Mighty Yell, as well as 2. We have 2 or more. We have a bunch of preloaded cards from the Yumi Arcade, which just opened nearby. They have a lot of games there. You should totally check it out. The Yumi Arcade. And then there's also a gift basket from Stormcrow Manor, and as well as a gift package from the developer of the Powerball, which is behind all of you. So we have plenty of prizes to go around. When we're all done here, please go and check out a raffle, and also take this time to support the Hand-Eye Society. We were in a bit of a bind this year, but this community came out and really supported us. It was really, really inspiring to see everybody help us out, so we can keep making great game programming for the public and Super Festival and the Hand-Eye Society Ball. So thank you all for supporting us and being here and watching if you're online. So feel free to buy a raffle. Sign up for our workshops, donate, and just support us, because it's really amazing to see all of the support that we have from all of you and everybody who is here. So thank you all, and I'm going to pass it on to Victoria.
Hi, everyone. I just have housekeeping notes. Hi. So what we're going to do now is we're going to strike all of these chairs, and then we're going to let the games begin, aka let the party begin. So I just asked those who are sitting in chairs, just stand up, clear out this way. We're going to strike this out so that we can get a dance floor and game spaces going. Thank you so much.